And as we emerge from our catastrophe, right, then let's talk about disasters and terrorism. Not only are disasters dangerous in and of themselves, right, but they also contribute to the rise in suicides, often the result of a loss of control or a loss of sense of purpose. All these can engender physical and psychological side effects. Terrorist events such as 9/11 cause lingering effects such as post-traumatic stress disorders, and we should probably define this. It's continued or delayed stress reaction in which individual involuntarily re-experiences, and that's a huge piece of it, the emotional, cognitive, and behavioral aspects of the trauma. And this was, you know, the term was kind of coined and applied to soldiers in Vietnam. And often what happened is soldiers would come back from Vietnam and there was no debriefing period. So you could be fighting today on your last day, hop in a helicopter after watching several of your buddies get shot, right? Be on a helicopter, be on a plane, and you could be back in San Francisco within 48 hours of leaving the fight in the jungle. There was no debriefing process. The military's learned a lot about that. Not that it's totally mitigating the effects of post-traumatic stress, because it certainly isn't. But then what happens with post-traumatic stress is elements that are present during the stressful situation, let's say helicopters, then become triggers, right? And this is very Pavlovian, right? Become triggers for a response that can be inappropriate because one's in a new context. And it's described in terms of soldiers, but a woman who gets raped in a parking garage can suffer post-traumatic stress just as easily. And now we look at the triggers are kind of closer to home even. That is, it might be her car, a parking garage, walking alone can all be triggering events. So all of these deserve significant treatment efforts, right? But post-traumatic stress disorder is not new. During World War II, they called it battle fatigue, right? During World War I, they called it shell shock. The Civil War was producing people with post-traumatic stress disorder. This is not a new thing. It's got a new name as of the 1970s, right? The media can serve to extend the influence of stressors to an ever greater number of people. So media coverage expands the experience of a catastrophe, and you know we've gone from television with newspapers, right, word of mouth, to newspapers to television news. When I was growing up, you could watch news on 3 channels in Los Angeles, and that was going to be at 5 and 6 and 11, and that was it. With the advent of cable, now we have 24-hour countless news networks, and with the advent of the internet and social media, one can get overfilled with news quite readily. So we have 24-hour news coverage, and when we find that Harry Potter has been exposed, whatever that meant, I just think it's a funny headline, everyone can now be made aware of this, and we all get engaged in it, right? And we might suffer then this vicarious trauma as a result, right? So we're exposed to stressors that aren't even really a direct element of our life, but it impacts us as if they were, right? So large transmission of stressors to a huge audience, right? Noise pollution, another environmental effect. Loud noise is an environmental stressor that can raise blood pressure, foster aggressive behavior, right? You ever have your roommate maybe making noise while you're trying to do something and you just feel your frustration building as a result of your distraction and your inability to complete the task? Okay, as a noise element, right? It can lead to health problems like neurological and intestinal disorders. Consider the military and police have developed and employ noise weapons, right? So, you know, these weapons, let's face it, sound pressure, that is the movement of air, that is sound pressure, right? If it's intense enough, could actually knock somebody over. It could certainly cause brain damage, and you know, there's allegations that in Cuba at the embassy that noise weapons or some kind of weapons were being used surreptitiously to harm ambassadors, and so these noise weapons can have tremendous influence. And of course, this guy doesn't exist so much anymore. And this is going to kind of wrap it up. So let me just kind of recount, because it was in multiple parts, The stressors come in various forms, and they can be predictable or they can be unpredictable. What's really important about the stressor is how we appraise the stressor and how we appraise our ability to deal with it. And that is our resources for dealing with it, as well as our core characteristics that allow us to deal with it. The problem is if we don't manage stress, it can have severe impact on our health and can make us more susceptible to accidents. And that's where we're going to go in 2.1. So we're going to talk about stress and emotion. We'll lead into another assignment. Remember that the homework assignment here was to explore Albert Ellis's model that really centered around the belief system. So that's it for this one, and we'll get to the next one on the flip side. See you guys later.